Krishna. Welcome to all devotees. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiret Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Nishtik. Hare Krishna. Today we continuing Srimad Bhagavatam Canto first, chapter 15. The Pandavas retired family. Shloka number 41 and 42. Vacham juhava manasi
वाचं जुहाव मनसि
tat prana itare chatama
तत्प्राण इतरे च तम
mrutya mrutyu apanam sautsargam
मृत्यु अपानं संसर्गं
tam panchatve hi ajo havit
तं पञ्चत्वे हि अजो हवेत्
tritve hutva cha panchatvam
त्रित्वे हुत्वा च पञ्चत्वं
तच्च एकत्वे अजोत मुनिः
तच्च एकत्वे अजुहो मुनिः
सर्व आत्मनि अजुहवित्
सर्व आत्मनि सर्वम् आत्मनि अजुहवेत्
ब्रह्मणि आत्मानम् अव्यये
ब्रह्मणि आत्मानम् अव्यये
वाचं जुहाव मनसि
वाचं जुहाव मनसि
तत्प्राणे इतरे च तमः
तत्प्राण इतरे च तम
मृत्यौ अपानं स उत्सर्गम्
मृत्यौ अपानं स उत्सर्गं
तं पञ्चत्वे हि अजोहवित्
तं पञ्चत्वे हि अजो हवेत्
त्रित्वे हुत्वा च पञ्चत्वम्
त्रित्वे हुत्वा च पञ्चत्वं
तच्च एकत्वे अजुहोत् मुनिः
तच्च एकत्वे अजुहोन्मुनिः
सर्वम् आत्मनि अजुहवित्
सर्वम् आत्मनि अजुहवेत्
ब्रह्मणि आत्मानम् अव्यये
ब्रह्मणि आत्मानम् अव्यये
वाचं जुहाव मनसि तत्प्राणे इतरे च तम मृत्यौ अपानं स उत्सर्गं तं पञ्चत्वे हि अजोहवित् त्रित्वे हुत्वा च पञ्चत्वं तच्च एकत्वे अजुहोन्मुनिः सर्वम् आत्मनि अजुहवित् ब्रह्मणि आत्मानम् अव्यये हरे
वाच्यं
कृष्ण
जुहाव मनसि तत्प्राण इतरे च तम मृत्यौ अपानं स उत्सर्गं तं पञ्चत्वे हि अजो हवेत् त्रित्वे हुत्वा च पञ्चत्वं तच्च एकत्वे अजुहोन्मुनिः सर्वम् आत्मनि अजुहवेत् ब्रह्मणि आत्मानम् अव्यये
हरे कृष्ण आशीष प्रभु जी
वाचं जुहवमानसि तत्प्राण इतरे च तं मृत्यो अपानं सत्सर्गं तं पाञ्चत्वे हि अजो हवीत् त्रित्वे हुत्वा च पञ्चत्वं तच्चैकत्वे
एकत्व
अजु एकत्वे अजु अजुहोन् मुनिः सर्वम् आत्मनि अजुहवेत् ब्रह्मणि आत्मनम् अव्यये हरे
हरे
कृष्ण
कृष्णा ट्रांसलेशन एंड purport by the Srila Prabhupada Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Then he amalgamated all the sense organs into the mind, then the mind into life, life into breathing, his total existence into the embodiment of the five elements, and his body into depth. Then, as pure self, he became free from the material conception of life, thus annihilating the gross body of five elements into the three qualitative modes of material nature. He merged them in one nescience and then absorbed that nescience in the self Brahman, which is inexhaustible in all circumstances. purport by the Srila Prabhupada. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Maharaj Yudhishthir, like his brother Arjuna, began to concentrate and gradually became freed from all material bondage. First, he concentrated all the actions of the senses and amalgamated them into the mind. Or, in other words, he turned his mind toward the transcendental service of the Lord. He prayed that since all material activities are performed by the mind in terms of action and reaction of the material senses, and since he was going back to Godhead, the mind would wind up its material activities and be turned toward the transcendental service to the Lord. There was no longer a need for material activities. Actually, the activities of the mind cannot be stopped, for they are the reflection of the eternal soul. But the quality of the activities can be changed from matter to the transcendental service of the Lord. The material color of the mind is changed when one washes it from contaminations of life breathing and thereby trees frees it from the contamination of repeated birth and death and situates it in pure spiritual life. All is manifested by the temporary embodiment of the material body, which is a product of mind at the time of death. And if the mind is purified by practice of transcendental loving service to the Lord and is constantly engaged in the service of the lotus feet of the Lord, there is no more chance of the mind's producing another material body after death. It will be freed from absorption in material contamination. The pure soul will be able to return home back to Godhead. All that is manifested in the material world is the product of the Mahat Tattva Avyakta. And things that are visible in our material vision are nothing but the combinations and permutations of such variegated material products. But the living entity is different from such material products. It is due to the living entity's forgetfulness of his eternal nature as eternal servitor of the Lord, and his false conception of being a so-called Lord of the material nature, that he is obliged to enter into the existence of false sense enjoyment. Thus, a concomitant generation of material energies is the principal cause of the mind's being materially affected. Thus, the gross body of the five elements is produced. Maharaj Yudhishthir reversed the action and merged the five elements of the body in the three modes of material nature. The qualitative distinction of the body as being good, bad, or mediocre is extinguished, and again the qualitative manifestation become merged in the material energy, which is produced from a false sense of the pure living being. When one is thus inclined to become an associate of the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, in one of the innumerable planets of the spiritual sky, especially in Goloka Vrindavan, one has to think always that he is different from the material energy. He has nothing to do with it, and he has to realize himself as pure spirit Brahman, qualitatively equal with the Supreme Brahman, Parmeshwar. Maharaj Yudhishthir, after distributing his kingdom to Parikshit and Vajra, did not think himself emperor of the world or head of the Kuru dynasty. This sense of freedom from material relation, as well as freedom from the material engagement of the gross and subtle encirclement, makes one free to act as the servitor of the Lord. Even though one is in the material world, this stage is called the Jivan Mukta stage or the liberated stage. Even in the material world, that is the process of ending material existence. Uh, one must not only think that he is Brahman, but must act like Brahman. One who only thinks himself Brahman is an impersonalist, and one who acts like Brahman is the pure devotee. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Ena Tasmai Sri Gurave Nama Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Ena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवाञ्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सगणरघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं सहाद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्विताञ्च नमो ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा. We try to understand from these two shlokas 41 and 42. Here in first shlok 41 shlokas they describe about how one can become free from the material conception of life, and the poor soul will be able to return home back to God. How he returned, that described. And 42 shlokas they describe about the who is Brahman and who is pure devotee. That describing Prabhuji will tell us in detail. Hare Krishna. Vancha kalpatarubhecha kripa sindhu bevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo
वैष्णवेभ्यो
namo.
नमो नमः.
Namo namo.
Hare Krishna. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 8.6, Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajante ante kalevaram tam tam eva eti kaunteya sada tad bhava abhavita. So whatever state of being one remembers when he quits the body, O son of Kuntī, that state he will attain without fail. So if one is transcendently absorbed in Krishna's service, then his next body will be transcendental, spiritual, not material. So here, these two shlokas, they are depicting the similar effort of Yudhishthir Maharaj, his final renunciation, his deep absorption in transcendence, and complete dissolution of his material identity. So we see that it is explained that he amalgamated all the sense organs into mind, then mind into life, life into breathing, total existence into five elements, body into death, and then as a pure self, he became free from material conception. And then he annihilated the gross body of five elements into qualitative modes of material nature, then merged into nescience and absorbed that nescience in self Brahman, which is infinitely inexhaustible. So these verses, they are significant because they are illustrating the highest level of detachment and self-realization which is achieved through yoga and jnana, knowledge of the absolute truth. So let us understand this process which Yudhishthir Maharaj is talking about. So in the first shloka, we see that Yudhishthir Maharaj is explaining about his amalgamation. So what he does is initially senses are there, like we all have senses. So senses are being merged into mind, and then mind goes into life, SML, and then he's concentrating on his breathing, apana and apana. We'll understand in detail. And then that is being concentrated upon the five gross elements of the body which is being made into a death. And once this first stage is completed, then the next stage starts, how he starts concentrating on Brahman. So from five elements, he's converting them, he's concentrating, he's moving all of those into the trigunas. And then the trigunas into the nescience, the one. So here he's losing the Dvaitvad. He's concentrating only on one. And then that one is concentrated upon the self, which then is concentrated upon Brahman, which is the absolute truth. So basically, these two shlokas are making us understand this journey from senses to Brahman. Prabhupada ji explains it in detail to us. And why Yudhishthira Maharaj did all these things is because again Krishna had said in Bhagavad Gita only in the 13th shloka of 8th chapter, Om iti ekaksharam brahma vyaharan mam anusmaran yam prayati tajandeham sayati paramam gatim. After being situated in this yoga practice and vibrating the sacred syllable Om, the supreme combination of letters, if one thinks of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and quits his body, he'll certainly reach the spiritual planets. And that is why Maharaj Yudhishthira, just like Arjuna, began to concentrate and slowly, steadily became free from all material bondage. So he concentrated all the accents of all the senses directly onto mind. No more sensory requirements. No, I don't want anything else. And once everything was being concentrated upon the mind, what he's done is it directly means is no, I want to serve only Krishna, 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 Hare. And at that time, he was praying to Krishna that because the material activities are performed by mind, because these cause the actions and the resultant reactions, and he wanted to go back to Godhead. So please let the mind wind up all material activities. Let me be turned towards service of you, Krishna. I no longer need any material activity. Now, Yudhishthira Maharaj had to pray this because mind is chanchala. Its activities cannot be stopped. And the activities are a reflection of the eternal soul. But the quality of the activities can be changed from matter to the transcendental service of Lord. And that is why Yudhishthira Maharaj make this prayer. The material color of the mind is changed when one is able to wash it clean off the contaminations of life breathing and get it completely cured of whatever are the results of the repeated births and deaths. And for that, it is necessary that the mind be concentrated only upon the Supreme Personality of God. If the mind is purified, then it can be engaged in service of Krishna. And then, if mind is constantly in the service of Krishna, then there cannot be any chance of producing another material body because it will be completely freed from material contamination. And the pure soul, it can go back home, back to Godhead. So, this material world that we talk about, whatever we see, is actually the product of the Mahatattva, Avyakta. If you remember the discussions we had around a month and a half ago, how the Mahatattva, it gets simply because of the glass of the energy. It is the raw material by which the whole material world is created. So this whole material world that we are seeing is nothing but combination and permutation of these material products. But the living entity, the soul, it is definitely different from material products. But because we forget our eternal nature as eternal servant of Krishna, we start getting the false conception that we can lord over the material nature. And so we start entering into the existence of false sense enjoyment. That is why Prabhupada ji makes a very important statement in the purport that concomitant generation of material energies is the principal cause of the mind being materially affected. And because of this, the five gross elements, the body, that is produced. And what Yudhishthira Maharaj is doing is reversing it exactly. So he immediately merges the five elements of the body into the three gunas. So if you really want to become an associate of Krishna in one of the Vaikuntha planets, especially Golok Vrindavan, then we have to understand that we are different from the material energy. We have got absolutely nothing to do with the material energies. We have to realize our self pure spirit nature, how we are qualitatively equal to the Supreme Brahman, Parameshwar, but quantitatively different. Brahmatma iti, Paramatma iti, Bhagavan iti. The three stages of realizing Krishna and going back home, back to Godhead. So Maharaj Yudhishthir distributed his kingdom to Parikshit and Vajra. He did not think himself emperor of the world or head of the Kuru dynasty. So the sense of freedom from material relations, freedom from material engagement, this makes us really free to act as servant of Krishna. Even though we may be still in the material world. So this stage where we are completely free from all material obligations and desirous and able to only serve Krishna is the Jivan Mukta stage, the liberated stage, which is possible in the material world. So Prabhupada ji in the purport makes one more very important observation that one must not only think that he is Brahman but also act like Brahman. If one is thinking that he is Brahman, then he is an impersonalist. But one who acts like a Brahman is the pure devotee. So what does it mean by acting like a Brahman? Acting like a Brahman means that we understand that we are eternal, we are spirit souls, and we have to go back home, back to Godhead. So these two shlokas that we are studying today, they are describing the yogic process of dissolution, which was followed by Yudhishthir Maharaj, wherein he renounced everything connected to the material world and merged his consciousness into Brahman. As per few of the acharyas, this process is part of the asam pratyagata yoga, or sometimes it is called as the nirvikalpa samadhi system, where a great yogi is able to withdraw from all external designations and unite with Supreme Lord. So, what are the stages? First stage is how we merge speech into mind. Vacham juhava manasi. So, this is the first stage, wherein we have to withdraw the words and speech into mind. So, what it signifies is silence or maun vrat and control over sensory expression. Hence, we'll find that those who are renunciate, they speak only what is necessary and ultimately renounce speech itself in favor of internal realization. We have been seeing this repeatedly, as Prabhupada ji has said, that the journey starts by controlling the tongue, whether it is eating or speaking. And similarly, this journey of going back home is starting with ensuring the first stage of withdrawing the words and speech into the mind. And then the second stage, manasi tat prana. The mind is always filled with desires and thoughts. So that mind has to be then merged into the prana, the life force. So this is pratyahar, that is withdrawal of the senses. What it means is that all mental activities has to be ceased and only pure consciousness has to remain. As we saw a couple of minutes ago, mind can never be stagnant. So if it is allowed to control or act or think for material activities, there will be material reactions and repeated birth, old age, disease, death. So what this conversion of manasi tat prana means is that we should think only about Krishna and have only pure consciousness remaining. And this helps us go into the third stage, prana itere chatam vritti avapanam. So this prana, Yudhishthira dissolved into apanam. Apanam is downward breath. So this signifies approaching death. This is an indication that consciously prepare to leave the body. So even in forensic medicine, when we do the analysis of what is the cause of the death, many times we find that the way the lungs are there when we do the autopsies, they are different. But modern medical science never understood the reasons behind it, which is mentioned here in the Bhagavatam. That at times the death is wherein you have had a apana, the downward breath, so the lungs are completely filled up, and at times it is prana, wherein it has been exhaled, so they are collapsed. And then Parikshit Maharaj reached the fourth stage, tam panchatve hi ajohavit. The body is composed of the five elements: earth, water, fire, air, and ether. So, what Yudhishthira Maharaj did is he relinquished the attachment to his body existence by mentally dissolving these elements. See, practically, he has not dissolved. All this is happening at the mental level because he's concentrating his mind on Krishna. And this is something where we have the principle from dust to dust, which is mentioned in the Upanishads. So, this means that the physical body is now returning to the nature. And once you have reached this stage, then we go to the next stage, which is Tritve Hutva Chapanchatvam, the five material elements. They are subtle manifestations of the three gunas, Sattva, Raja, and Tama. So Yudhishthira dissolves this material body into these modes, renouncing even the last traces of material influence. And then Tat Cha Ekatve Ajuhon Munihi, the three modes into the unmanifested. The three gunas are then absorbed into Prakriti, the unmanifested material nature, which is the original cause of creation. This is cosmic dissolution at the highest level, wherein everything merges into the single unmanifest stage. And then he is offering self into Brahman. Sarvam Atmani Ajuhovit Brahmani Brahmani Atmanam Avyay. So complete identity into Brahman. So this is a state of complete liberation where the soul is free from all material bonds and enters the eternal spiritual existence. So what we are seeing here is the profound insight into the art of conscious merging and acceptance of death. So Yudhishthir Maharaj fulfilled his duties, renounced attachments, dissolved identity into Brahman, because that is the final objective, ultimate goal to attain Krishna's abode. So key takeaway for us is we have to have detachment from worldly person, which can help us to go to liberation. We have to have self-realization and surrender to God, which are the highest pursuits. Death has to be embraced as a transition. It should not be feared. And spiritual wisdom can only prepare us for the ultimate journey beyond life. So by following the footsteps of Yudhishthira Maharaj, we too can expect eternal spiritual bliss. Hare Krishna. Dandavat Pranam. I welcome everyone who has joined us for the chanting